student at Riverside City College. It's been my first time, this is my first time at Fresno, so thank you for welcoming me to your college.
Thank you.
I do a lot of outreach in the community of Riverside. And over the past 12 years, I have spoken to a variety of students, all of which come from different walks of life. And not just young students, but old students, reentry adults. But primarily when I work with young people, I find that the information that helps them to make decisions about college is sometimes just not there. And so I try to demystify the college process and help them to understand, let's go ahead and close the door, and help students understand basically the opportunities that exist that are part of our societal infrastructure already. And a lot of young people don't know these things. Now, when I first got my job, I was very excited. I woke up very early, put on my clothes, look good, get a cup of coffee, buy the paper, and I'm reading the paper. And the front page of the Press Enterprise that day, ironically, the first day of my job, said, "What's wrong with our kids?" And it had a picture of a high school class, a math class, where the photographer somehow snuck in and took a picture of kids with their heads down in the class. And then they plastered it on the front page and it said, "What's wrong with our kids?" So I cut that out, and I have an empty office with this old desk and this old chair, and I pinned it up, and I meditated on that thought. What's wrong with our kids? And I thought, maybe it's not the kids, because I was one of those kids. Maybe it's a lot of other things. So I devised a way to help communicate to kids, or high school age kids, that helps them to understand the big picture. Everybody say the big picture.
The big picture.
So the presentation I'm about to offer you is that presentation. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
So keep in mind, this is traditionally intended for youth, but I found that others can gain a lot from it. Okay? So forgive me if I get in character, make voices. I'm just going to have fun. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, a long time ago, in the United States, if you wanted to go to college, you could only go to a private university. There are 80 plus private universities in the state of California. What are some of them?
USC.
Everybody. Okay, we got some LA folks in the house. Okay. Who else we got? Private university. Say again? Loyola. All right. Cal Baptist. How about Pepperdine?
SoCo, is that
Not sure. How about Stanford?
Stanford?
How about University of San Diego?
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you. University of San Francisco. Come on, guys. You know.
University of Pacific.
Say University of the Pacific. Azusa Pacific. Claremont McKinney College. Do you guys know about the Claremont McKinney College? Do you guys know the community of Claremont Upland in Southern California?
Oh, that's great.
Right there, nestled in the hills of Claremont Upland, there are these set of prestigious universities equal to that of the Ivy League on the East Coast. But you don't hear a lot about them. That's what this presentation's about. I want you to know what's out there. So, a long time ago, if you wanted to get an education, you could only go to a private university. What do we know about private universities today? They're silly expensive. How much are they? Anywhere from $24,000 to $36,000 a year, correct? And some of them are $40,000 to $50,000 a year, correct? Now some of those, forgive me, I do move around. Now why do they cost so much? Are they greedy? Are they just mean? Are they like, we don't want poor folks to come to our school, so we're going to raise up our price? Is that the case? Well, when you get to $40,000, $50,000, that's a conversation we can start to have. But $24,000 to $36,000, if you bought an education and you went to the store and you looked on the shelf and you saw the sticker price, that's how much an education costs. That's how much it costs out of the box. Teachers don't come cheap. Classrooms don't come cheap. Computers, air conditioning, law enforcement, schools are not cheap. They cost a lot of money. So if you bought it out of the box, that's how much it would cost. And over 150 years ago, that was the case as well. How many of you guys know who Frederick Douglass was? Grant is a presentation I do with everyone. When I learned more about Frederick Douglass, I became more intrigued. And one of his quotes really stuck to me because it helped me to look at the big picture. And I attempt to quote, "You cannot have a functioning democracy lest you have an educated populace." What does that mean? What does he say? You cannot have a functioning democracy unless you have an educated populace. Yes, sir.
Without prioritizing education, dumb people are still allowed to vote.
Okay, that's a good summary of it. Yeah. Are there such things as dysfunctional democracies?
Yeah.
A lot of how many youth have parents that came from other countries? Why did they come? For a better life. Now, when they left where they came from, did they come from a communist state? They came from a democracy, a so-called democracy, but it was dysfunctional. Meaning, they claim that you're free, they tell you you're free, but when you get out and you do your things to try to be free, are you truly free? No. So those people, those parents said, I'm going to go where? To America. Why? Because they believe that we have a functioning democracy. And for the most part, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Okay? But the law of averages is, it'll work out for me. Because other people have been doing it, and historically our history is built that way. So people knew that back then. And Frederick Douglass doesn't get a lot of credit for the vision that he bestowed. A lot of what's good in America was given to us by women. He inspired a lot of women. Can I get a woo-woo for the ladies? Because they helped to create and bring the past. K through 12. You guys know what K through 12 is, right? 5 years Army Airborne. Deployments to Desert Storm in Bosnia. I remember we helped to rebuild an elementary school in Bosnia. It was a unique experience for me. When we showed up very early at 5 a.m. to hand over the keys to the village elders, all the kids were lined up in the snow ready to go to school. And I'll never forget on how, at first it's a little scary because there's so many of them, but they would come up and they try to take off that patch that said the American flag. And there was like America, and they say with a K, America. I don't know how to take that. I just like, here are your keys, go to your school. But they were happy. They wanted to go to school. These little kids had been waiting for school. Their school had been blown up. Within a year after that, I was home in Southern California. How do you think the kids looked at school in California? If you didn't have a school to go to, would you be happy? Or would you want the school? So there's a lot of negativity we could talk about our country in many ways. But just look down the street. Is there a school for you to go to? To begin your march to my favorite F word. I'm not talking about Republican Party saluting the flag freedom. I'm not talking about, look at me, I'm free, I'm American. I'm talking about, do you feel free in your life? Because most of us really are not. As a matter of fact, we're not free. We're addicted to people, to drinking, to drugs, to fashion, to lifestyle, to love, to success, to beauty. We enslave ourselves right here, many times. But if I gave you freedom, would you know what to do with it? Do you know how to use your freedom? And another word for, another way to look at that, the concept of time. Because that's really where your freedom lives, in your time. So, forgive me, I digress. So a long time ago, this was the case. And don't be surprised if these conversations didn't happen back then. As a result of these conversations and leaders, they helped to create the very first public university system in the country, if not the world. The universities of California. There are 10 UCs. What are they?
UC Berkeley.
UC Berkeley,
Santa Barbara.
UC Santa Barbara, UC Davis, UC
Santa Cruz.
LA, UC Irvine, UC Riverside, UC San Diego, UC Merced, UC Santa Cruz, UC San Francisco. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's all. That's in Cal State. That's two. You see me in college?
You see me in college.
For 1 year tuition at a UC, right now, and trust me, they've been messing up my presentation. I've been doing this presentation for years. They keep messing with the prices. But right now, for 1 year at a UC, you're looking at about $14,000. Now, you guys know that's just tuition, right? And you guys know tuition is just the cost of classes. It doesn't count for your insurance, your car, your living expenses, all that extra, right? How many of you guys have been to a UC? Visited? Okay. What's their reputation as a system? Huh?
Prestige.
Say again?
Prestige.
Prestigious. Here's the deal about the UCs. What kind of culture lives at the UCs? And I mean this in a good way. They're the nerds. I mean that in a good way. At the UCs, it's a culture of excellence. We're supposed to be, especially when it gets to graduate level. My invention, my book, my investment, my research, very individualistic. The UC students read, write, and test every week. Read, write, and test. What are they doing next week? What are they doing the week after? What are we doing next month, Pinky? You guys don't remember that cartoon? Yeah. What are we doing every day? We're reading, we're writing, and testing. How many guys like to read? How many guys like to write? How many guys like to take tests? But that's the culture that lives there. You will probably never experience a disrupted class at a UC. And the teacher doesn't even need to assert themselves. The students will turn, shh. Very intense. Very competitive. Teacher will only award so many A's. I only give 20 A's. There are 50 people in the class. Do you see what that does to the student? That makes them very focused, very disciplined. It teaches them that behavior on how to be how to individually be successful, right? We need the UCs. You know what they're doing at UCR? How many guys have seen the movie Avatar?
Which one?
That's the first one. The blue beanstalk people in the different planet, and they want to come and steal the resources. In that movie, the plants glow. You guys remember that? The technology that makes living organisms glow was discovered at UCR by a professor. Now, she didn't do this work because she wanted people to make a movie out of it, use it for a movie. She's doing the work for a different reason. The movie people wanted to use her technology. You know what drones are? Mm-hmm. They're little robots, right? You've heard of the ones in Afghanistan. You know what nano processing is? Now imagine drones that are nano size, that have the chemical of glowing on them. And they are attracted to cancer cells. And they are injected into the body and seek out cancer cells. And when they do, they attach themselves. So that when you take MRIs and X-rays, you can see where the cancer lives because it is glowing.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing stuff?
I know that's amazing.
That's awesome stuff. We need them. We need the UCs. We need investors. We need entrepreneurs. We need researchers. We need scientists. We need engineers. Our country needs those things. But because I'm very, very smart, does that guarantee I'm a good leader? No. Let me introduce you to the Cal States. Because I know a lot of smart people that don't like other people. The Cal States. For 1 year of tuition at a Cal State, approximately. You know, when I was a little kid, I used to think that if something costs a lot of money, that must make it really, really good. And then my mom took me to the swap meet. I found out different. Right? You get all kinds of things for the same amount of money, right? Don't let the price fool you. Again, what did I say about the private schools? Why do they cost so much? Because they have a mission, and their mission is what? Cha-ching. They're in business. They've chosen the business of education, but nonetheless, it is a business. So they must charge at cost, if not more, to make a profit. Let's not confuse it. It's just a business. Now, some of them are very good. Some of them are very prestigious and have other missions. But the bottom line is they are a business. How can these universities, and I haven't got to the details of the Cal State, but how can the UC, these are what? How can they charge less money than these schools charge, but be as good, if not better? How can they do that?
Subsidized?
They're subsidized by whom?
Government.
By the government, and the government gets its money from whom?
Taxpayers.
Do you guys pay taxes?
Yeah.
You guys have parents that pay taxes on property? And go home and hug them. Everybody say, because these are your schools, are they not? Everybody say, that's my school.
That's my school.
Say it with some ganas, that's my school. That's my school. So next time you see some knucklehead with a Sharpie pen in the bathroom, smack him upside the head. That's my school. Just kidding, I'm not advocating striking anyone. But you got my point.
Yes.
Okay? You got my point. These are your schools. These are your schools. There are 23 Cal States. What are some of them? Fullerton. Ooh, that's where I went. Long Beach, LA, Dominguez Hills, Northridge. I got Long Beach. How about in this area? San Diego State. You got Fresno State. All up and down. Now, here's the thing about the Cal States. Remember I said that these guys were the nerds? And what do nerds do? And it's not a bad thing. We're going to talk about that too. What do? They read, they write, and they test. And what do they do the next day? If you want to go to a UC, that's the culture you can expect. It's all about expectations when you arrive. What you know is going to happen to you. That's what happens there. Because that's what they do. That's their mission. Now, the Cal State, you're going to have to read, write, and test. But when you get to your core classes, that means your major classes, it's a lot of group work. You guys like group work? Yeah. Some people. Who doesn't like group work? Some people don't like group work. You know, and let's talk about it. Pros and cons to group work. Okay, what are some pros to group work? Huh? Well, we're doing pros now. Positive. Shared workload.
Different perspectives.
New perspectives. Networking, that's always important. And actually, that's a historical purpose for college. Think about it. Okay, college was designed to help you network. Okay, what are some cons? Attitude. Is there a better word for that other than slacker? But okay, we'll put slacker. People don't do their fair share. Okay? Because when you go and you are in a group, let's say all the four of you ladies here are in one group, the super duper group.
Yeah, right.
You all get the same grade, no matter who does more work than another.
Yeah.
You can't handle that. Huh? You might be more of a UC person, right? You like to control everything you do, and it's my grade, and I can live with if I fail or if I succeed, it's my responsibility, right? But working with a group is hard to do. Because let's say you do all the work. She does some work because she's over there. I don't want to be in a group. Right? And we don't even know her name because she shows up late every day and leaves early. Right? And then she's like, I don't know what to do, right? So, if you do all the work and they all get the A, who's to blame?
Her. Me?
Everybody. Them can work harder.
For not
Yourself.
telling us what to do.
Yourself. Why yourself? Because it requires understanding, it requires communication, it requires management skills, it requires time management, it requires communication skills, it requires leadership. That's hard to do, huh? Is it hard to motivate people?
Oh, yeah.
And and some people think leadership is sit down and you're never going to do anything, you always mess it up and da da da. Is that leadership? No. Leadership is always with a positive, optimistic tone, even if it's a negative issue. So to be a leader, you would have to delegate, manage your time, keep tabs on people, assign people, give them ownership. That's the kind of experience that would happen at the Cal State. Can I tell you a true story about my Cal State experience?
Which one first?
Cal State Fullerton, real quick.
Okay.
I was, my class was, sorry, I just pulled a review there. Cal State Fullerton, event management class, the Newport Beach Film Festival. My professor was the director of the Newport Beach Film Festival. So basically the class was a year-long, 2-semester class, and we put on the Newport Beach Film Festival. If we failed, the festival failed. A lot of pressure, right? So I was in a group with 3 other girls, or ladies, or women, forget. And we used to meet after class and at Starbucks on Saturdays. And we had to put together this business plan with an executive summary, a budget, and all this extra stuff. We had to secure a venue. We had to do all these things. It were real-life business plan. And then we had to present it to the professor. And then the professor would schedule us to do a presentation to investors, real-life investors. So our presentation would generate revenue to put on our desired activity. Okay? So a third of the grade was the presentation. A third of the grade was the business plan, and a third of the grade was the actual implementation. So we put together, and we're talking to each other. It's like, Tony, you did great. And I'm like, you did great too. And let's put it together. And it's like, you guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. It's Orange County.
Yes.
And then one of the girls sat there and said, whatever happened to so-and-so? Because there was this girl that we call so-and-so. We didn't know her because she left. She came in late and left early all the time. But she was in our group. So we did the work without her because she was never around. She never replied to emails. She never contacted us. Now that we had produced it and we knew we were going to get an A because we knew we did a good job, we started hating on so-and-so. And then Waters was like, yeah, so-and-so, she's never around. And the other girl's like, yeah, whatever happened to so-and-so? And right when they're talking about so-and-so, guess who walks in? Don't you love it when life works out like that? And she walked in, oh, she was good. She walked in with 4 Starbucks executives. And she had this silly voice that I thought you only heard on the Disney Channel. But she walked in and was like, oh my God, you guys are done? Awesome. You guys are so cool. Oh, you know what? I've been working so hard. I got 2 jobs. Bye. We're like, we were just hating on so-and-so. What happened? I don't know. There's good coffee, though. She played us. So we went to the professor. We said, she hasn't done anything. What do we do? And I'll never forget the professor took us a class and he looked at us and said, did you talk to her? We're like, no. So we called the meeting. And she was there early. I think, and she changed her composure. She looked a little different. And the girls were like, you tell her, tell her. I'm like, why me? It's like, you're the guy, you tell her. I said, look, you haven't done anything. A third of the grade is the presentation, and you haven't done anything. We're going to get an A. How do we fix this? And the girls were like, you can't fix it. Remember that binder? Remember how valuable that binder was? I picked it up, and I said, you do the final presentation. And the other girls were like, no, that's our A. And the other girl was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Figure it out. That means you have to study the binder. That means you have to make phone calls. That means you got to work hard before that presentation, and then you got to go talk to these investors and convince them of your plan. Everyone was angry with me. It's very lonely when you're a leader. The day of the presentation arrived, and she came in a suit, and she looked at us in our eyes, and like an adult, shook her hands and said, my apologies, don't worry about it, I got this. And she went up and gave a great presentation. And the other girls were like, I still hate her. Did I lift her up?
Yes.
Did I discipline her?
Yes.
Did I help her to learn?
Yes.
Did I make her a better person?
Yes.
And did I teach the others humility?
Yes.
And did I learn a lot?
Yes.
And it can be lonely when you make tough decisions. That's the kind of experience you can expect at the Cal State. So don't look at prices and start judgmenting or having this perception that if something costs a lot of money, that will make it really, really good. Because I've heard of some private universities that are just not that good. Okay? It's a matter of perspective. These were built for us. We must use them. Now, it is true, especially sometimes at the UCs, but usually at the private schools, where some people, especially in academia, they're like, what school did you go to? Oh, I went to RCC. But then I transferred to Cal State Fullerton, got a bachelor's degree, and I also went on to get a master's degree from a private school. Sometimes our culture historically puts a lot of emphasis on the school you go to.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all about networking. But the math class I take at UCR is the same as the math class I take at Cal State, is the same as the math class I take at Harvard. An English class, oh wait, I'm jumping the gun. I apologize. I forgot one little bar. The California Community Colleges. There are 112 California Community Colleges.
We won.
For 1 year tuition at a California community college, I think right now it's about that, about $1,000, right? For 12 units, it's a little bit more. We'll say $1,150. Won't be too much more.
Yeah.
Basically, it's $540 a semester, right? About $540 a semester. And that's not kind of fees and books. But for the point of the presentation, it's roughly $1,000, $1,200. You guys know what units are, right? What are the ladders? Ladders of education. A certificate, 24 to 36 units, right? These markers are horrible. An associate degree, how many units? 60 units. Sometimes a combination of your certificate and general ed put together, right? What's after an associate degree? If you move on to a university, what's after a bachelor's? 36 units plus. What's after a master's? A doctorate. It's basically you're collecting your chips. So from a California community college, I can go to any university in the country. Can I get a woo-woo?
Woo-woo!
Do you have access to education?
Yes.
Going back, what was that quote? It says you cannot have a functioning democracy unless you have an educated populace. Now, The economy has been pushing and making my story, my presentation wrong. And I'm an advocate to make sure that doesn't keep happening. Because I'm going to share a little bit about my story. If it wasn't for these California community colleges, I'd be a different man today. They were a precious, precious resource that platformed me to more. Much more. Much more. Everybody say 4 systems.
4 systems.
What are the 4 systems?
Private.
Oh, wait, I get ahead of myself. Now, let's not write off the private schools. There are a lot of good private schools out there. And they might be more expensive, that's true. But right now, it's about choices. What's another word for choices? Yes. Do you see how it lives in the buildings? A school is only as good as the people in those buildings. But do you see that it lives in the hearts of the people that work in those buildings? Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Because I've seen societies that don't have strong infrastructure. A lot of the kids in the United States don't appreciate what they got. So we got to remind them. And that's what I try to do with it. So the 4 systems are what?
Private. UC.
Community colleges. All right, so now you guys know the 4 systems. So go tell a friend. If they want to go to college, they can. You know, I played football. I know it doesn't show, but many years ago I did. And so I started coaching Pee Wee. I like coaching Pee Wee. Those kids are a lot of fun. They make it fun. And there was this one kid. He just had so much character. I love this kid. He just carried himself well. Very humble, but very strong at the same time. And I was teaching him outside linebacker. Forgive me if I use some football scenarios, but I think a lot of you guys are a little familiar with football. There was a play going to the outside. It was a sweep. And as an inside linebacker or outside linebacker, he had to step up, meet the blocker, shed the block, and make a tackle. Which I had spent a whole week and a half teaching him that. So this day at practice, he was there, he was waiting, the ball was coming his way. He did everything I told him. He hit the guy, he stood him up, extended his elbows, shed the block, hit the guy with the ball, and he hit him hard. And then he just slid off. And now, as a coach, I don't know if you could tell, but I got a lot of energy, so I'm running up, and I was like, and I look at him in his face, I get close to the face mask, and I'm like, you did it. And he's like this. No, I didn't. You did everything I taught you. I messed up. No, you didn't mess up. You did everything. You're just missing one thing. Grab cloth. Hold on for dear life. If that guy's bigger than you, then hold on. How many guys have grades that are not as good as you can be? Yeah. And you try. You do all the right things. You try to do your homework. How many guys ever read a page, you turn the page, you forgot everything you read? You have to read the page over. You do all the right things, but you're missing just one thing. You're missing one thing. It doesn't make you bad, and you are learning. And you are improving. You must practice. You must continually do it. The way I like to introduce people to this concept that if you feel that you are trying all the right things, but you keep failing, I want to introduce this concept of time. Time. That's not very good. My very first, oh yes, I didn't tell you guys. I wasn't a very good high school student. As a matter of fact, I was asked to leave my high school when I was young. So after some time in the military, I think I matured a little bit, and I went to college. Well, my very first college class, I had some bad habits from high school. Right? I walked into the back of the class. How many of you guys notice that most students want to gravitate to the back, right? Not like these girls here, right? They're way in the front. And I wasn't prepared. And, usually I had these very nice women teachers like, Tony, you're so funny. Go to the principal's office. Because I would, always sit there and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't have a pen. Do you have a pen? And the girls were like, oh, okay. Do you have a paper? And the girls usually roll their eyes like, oh. Can I get your number? These bad habits from high school. I'm an adult in a college acting like I'm in high school. And then I walked into an economics class. And the professor there, he looked just like the movie. Because I told you, I never had a big scary ugly man teacher. Right? And he was about 6 foot. He had a big old panza, right? His stomach was pushing the buttons out. You could see the belly button hairs. And he had a coat with the elbow pads, right? Corduroy. He had the glasses and the bald head with the goatee. Just like the movies. Me, I'd never been to a college. I don't know the culture, so me, it was like, look, it's like the movies. But I have bad habits. And me, growing up in a single-parent home, a lot of stress, a lot of fighting, I have a tendency to talk a lot when I get nervous, when I feel tension. And that class was very tense. You guys know what I mean by a tense environment. You feel it as soon as you walk in, right? And usually I talk because I'm fishing for who's mad, right? Who's giving off those vibes. So this class was very tense. All the students had their heads down to the desk, and he hadn't even begun class yet. He's just sitting there writing on the board. So I tried to break the ice, and I said, hey, teacher. They like to be called professor. I said, hey, teacher, how do you get an A in your class? And he was writing on the board. He said, who said that? And none of these people in the class knew me. Well, they pointed at me, sold me out really quick. And he was a big guy, and the classes were small, so he took his big self. You want an A in my class? And I look at him like, no. Not no more. You want an A in my class? I'll tell you how to get an A in my class. I'll tell you how to get an A in life, he said. And this is what he said. For every hour you are in my class, he was a 3-unit class, you should study 2 hours outside of class. How many hours does he want me to study? 6 hours, plus the 3 hours I'm in his class, a total of what? 9 hours contributed to his class. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's crazy. He doesn't know I have a girlfriend that keeps paging me, I love you. Remember we had pagers? You guys don't remember pagers. So as soon as he said that, the whole class just grew quiet. Got tense again, so I couldn't resist. I opened my mouth and I said, so how do you get a C? He looked at me with his condescending look. And he said, you know what? College is like anything else in life. You get out of it what you put into it. If you don't give it time, it will not give you love in return.
Wow.
It will not be there for you when you need it. When you're in a job interview, when you're speaking to people, when you're giving a speech, when you're advocating for yourself. The education will not be there for you if you do not give it time, which is another version of love. Whatever happened to that little dog, that little cat, that little goldfish you wanted? You're like, mommy, please, mommy. No, I don't want animals. But you kept crying and you kept whining, and they let you, and then you neglected it. What happened? And you know what? And I told you, I've been doing this presentation for years in all sorts of places, and everyone responds with the same answer. It died. It ran away. It's true, because it happens to all of us. Whatever happened to that boyfriend, girlfriend you didn't give time to? What happened to the relationship? It broke down. The same, you know what? When last year, my father passed away. And it was unfortunate because my sister and I, we were fighting during the time. My mom was very upset about it. You know why my sister was mad with me? Because I couldn't cry at the funeral. He never gave me time. So when it was time for me to cry, it didn't come. That being an example that's heartfelt. Time equals love. Education is a living being. Education lives in your heart and in your mind, and when you share it, and it lives in relationships, it lives in communities. Education helps us to enjoy our freedom. So that when we look at school, we don't look at it like, oh, I got to do homework. Oh, I don't want to do that because it takes up my time. And I'd rather be doing this with my time than that. What is your vision? What do you want out of your life? What do you love? And that's where your time should be. Because time is love. This concept of time, it matters so much. Can I get a woo-woo?
Woo-woo!
I know this board is a little dirty, so I'm going to keep going. Now, sometimes we feel stressed. How many guys feel stressed?
Time.
My mom used to get very scared when she was stressed because she would build up stress in her back. And I was a rambunctious kid, so I'm like, Mommy, right? She always used to go like this. She worked 10, 12 hours at a factory in LA and would drive home in the traffic and then come home and cook and clean and smack us around and put us off the bed. Stress is energy. Our human mind creates energy. Literally. How many of you guys taken physical science? What's the rule of energy?
It can't be created or destroyed.
It is only transformed. Correct? Very good. Very good. So if our minds create energy, literally electrical impulses, to give you an example, I'm at a crosswalk. The crosswalk has a red hand blinking. So my mind sees, my eyes interpret that sign as what?
What?
Wait.
Oh.
But when I see green that says walk, my eyes will take that message, interpret it in my brain. My brain will then send electrical impulses to my legs, and then I proceed to walk. Correct? Now, what if it was green? What if I read walk? What if the electrical impulses were sent, but I don't move? What happens to that energy?
Miss that light.
Yes, right. Not only do you miss the light, but you've stored energy in your body. Because remember, energy is not created nor destroyed. It is only transformed. So now the energy is not used to walk. Now the energy is stored in my muscles as a form of tension, a form of stress, a form of thinking. The more I think about things I cannot control or I cannot do anything about, the more energy is built up. How many of you guys seen a lot of people who are stressed, their back hurts? Why do men usually die at a much younger age than women? Because from a childhood, from a young man, they're often told us, like, be a man, don't cry. Be a man and hold it inside. Where do men have most of their muscles besides their back? A lifetime of holding in anger, resentment, depression pushes down on that chest cavity and makes that heart have to work harder and harder. Sometimes women are good. They're good at talking. They're good at crying. They're good at venting. They're good at letting it out. Just like the last show, you guys weren't here for the last presentation, but life is secular. So the energy is secular. So if you're feeling stressed, you got to let that energy go. Everybody let it go. Everybody let it go. Let that energy go. Let it go. That's just one of the ways I do it, but you can do it whatever way you decide. You can do it by playing music. You can do it by working out. You can do it by shopping. You can do it by calling a friend. You can do it. Now, there's a lot of unhealthy ways that people deal with stress sometimes, but guess what? They're just as unhealthy as it is keeping the stress. So, just like that little kid who made the hit, who followed all the instructions and still missed the tackle, you still have this platform. It's a gift. It's a gift. But if I don't know how to use that gift, if I don't know how to use time and understand that time is an interpretation of love and freedom, it's like having a Christmas gift that you never open. You never know what it could have been. That's what you are. You're an unopened Christmas gift. And when you graduate, you're starting to open that up. Because you're finding out what you can be. What you can be. My passion, my excitement, there's a lot I could talk about. I have over 3 hours of material. That's funny. Okay, before I go, well, with that said, before I go on to my story, which I'm going to try to cram my story in about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. My friend and coworker and boss produced this book. It's an inexpensive book. You can look for it. I'm going to give a copy away today. Okay. It is a book that is titled The Plan. A guide for women raising African American boys from conception to college. Now, I read this book, and I looked at the workbook. It comes with the workbook. It also has a website called IHaveAPlan.net. IHaveAPlan.net. You can find this book there. I read this book, and I found a lot of parallels. Obviously, my experience is a different experience. It's called The Plan. Tell me, when I share my story, and if you have this book, you'll find some parallels. So, my story might run, and some of you guys might sneak away, so I want to give the book now. And I'm trying to find a fair way to share or give this away. So the first requirement is you must be a female with a son. Okay, that limits it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these females with sons, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 500. 1 and 500.
But you have to tell me so you don't change your number.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
What's your number? 12. 1.
270.
69.
6. 118. What was the number?
277.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Please read it.
I will.
Please share it.
I will.
Please brag about it.
She will.
Okay.
She will consider that I got
I got limited time, so here I go. If you want one of my cards, feel free to grab one. I grew up in La Puente, California. How many guys familiar with La Puente? San Gabriel Valley?
Nogales.
No, yes. Nogales High School. That's where I went. Yes, that's right. Single parent home. My mom worked at factories in LA. My mom left home every morning at 4 a.m., 4:30. I know this because my bed was in the hallway. We had a 2-bedroom house. My 2 sisters had 1 bedroom. My mom had the other bedroom. I was the only boy, so I slept in the hallway. And every morning, I remember my mom turning on that light, and I would wake up and say, "Where are you going, Mommy?" She said, "Oh, go to bed, I'm going to work." So when I was a kid and I went to school, people didn't say, "You're going to be a doctor one day, you're going to be a lawyer one day, you're going to be a businessman one day." They say, "You hungry? You hungry?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Well, you better get to school, because that's where the food is at." That's where I went. Now, I grew up in a neighborhood where you either had a shaved head with tattoos on your neck or you had hair down to here. It was one or the other. And I made my mom a lot of promises, and the only one I ever kept was the fact that I got no tattoos to this day. Now, of course, the culture of tattoos had changed, but when I was growing up, it was a different me. As I grew older, I became more independent, maybe a little bit more attitude. And I had hair down to here. So Saturday morning I wake up, put on my baseball jersey, put on my Levi's and my Vans, my hair, and I'm walking to school. And as I start walking to school, I'll never forget, behind this big tree, psst, hey, Tony. Who's that? Psst, hey, Tony, come on, let's go. Like, where are we going? I was like, let's go do this and let's go do that. Now, I was a kid. And I said, okay. And then when I get home, how was your day at school? It was fine. And the next day, I'm walking to school with all intent of going to school, but there's my friend again. Hey, Tony. Hey, so-and-so said she liked you. Why don't we go over da-da-da-da? Okay. Now, I continued that behavior for several years. Now, granted, I played football from Pee Wee, little guy football, Rolling Raiders, all the way up to high school. And I was a weird one because I would go back to school for football practice. Like, what's up with him? If you're going to ditch, you're going to ditch. No, I love football because football was my sanctuary. When there was fighting in the house, football in the street was my escape. That junior year, that football team made it to CIF. And I got brought up. And we won the first game. And we won the second game. And we won the third. And we lost the big game. So that next year, in the locker room, after that big game, we said, this team's going to take it. The school's never won a CIF. We're going to do it. And we got the guys to do it. So that coming fall, or that coming spring rather, I'm walking to school. Shh, hey, Tony. Dude, what are you doing? Let's go over here. Let's do that. No, I got to go to school. We're going to win CIF next year. I got to go get bigger, faster, stronger. I got to go work out. We're going to do this. Okay. That same day, I get a call to the principal's office from the classroom. I'm like, what's the principal want with me? I never done nothing. So I'm walking to the principal's office. There's only 2 times in my life, in my youth, rather, that I saw my mother between 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. This was the first time. I walked into the office, and there was my mother. My mother is a lively Latina. She's broken 3 brooms on my back. For a while, I thought Spanish was all these cuss words. I didn't know. But when I saw her in that environment, she was very humbled, very quiet, with her black factory khakis, black sneakers, just sitting with her purse on her lap. And the principal says, "Oh, Tony, you're here. Mrs. Ortiz, I'm so sorry to have to bring you from work. Please come into my office." So he cut straight to the chase, and he brought out, he says, "Mrs. Ortiz, I called you in here because I have this, these are the number of school days in a school year. These are the number of absences your son has over the past 2.5 years. And my mom just looks. She doesn't even look at me. Then he opens the thing, and he takes out this envelope, and he brings out this stack of half-sheet papers. And he said, "Mrs. Ortiz, is this your signature?" And my mom says, No, that's not me. "Mrs. Ortiz, your son is so far behind in credits that we're going to have to send him to the continuation school." Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, because that's where all my friends were. "Mrs. Ortiz, this concludes our meeting. I'll be in touch with you." My mom didn't look at me. She got up and walked away. So you can imagine it was a long walk home. And I used to love walking home because you could smell my mom's cooking from down the street. Especially after football practice, I loved that. And I could smell it again. It was a reminder that she was home. And it was a very small house. And so as soon as you open the front door, the kitchen's right there. So I tried one of these. "Hi, Mom." Now, most of the time she would have yelled at me, threw some at me. I was like just bracing. But no, she did something different. As soon as I walked by her, she said, Antonio. And I stopped. Yeah? And she always spoke to us in Spanish, but today she chose English because I think she thought we didn't respect her. She's like, come here, sit down. So I sat down. She looks at me and she says, what do you think I do all day? And I'm being the teenager I am. You sound like Ricky Ricardo, right? Tony, what do you think I do all day? You go to work. That's right, Tony. Have you ever seen me miss a day of work? No, Mom. What would happen, Tony, if I missed a day of work and said, oh, I'm just going to go get all kinds of beers and do whatever 10 a.m. in the morning? You wouldn't get paid, Mom. What happened if I would do that, Tony? We wouldn't have this house. That's right. 3 jobs I worked when your father left us. 2 I kept. To save money so that you can move out of those apartments from Boyle Heights so that we can have a house here in La Puente. I thought your sister was the one. You've been deceiving me all this time. Tony, I'm scared for you. And she went into her room and cried. I know that. I'm a kid, I'm a teenager, I got up out of the table, whatever. She'll be mad at Carmen tomorrow. Carmen was good for my sister. The next morning, I woke up, and I'm like, gotta go to school, so I'm going to school, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh no, football. I literally started sprinting, hopped the fence, ran across the field, went to the coach's office. I was like, coach, he's they already told me, Tony. Mrs. Todd, my English teacher, they already told me, Tony, you had a lot of potential. I tried. So I was in the stands. And I'll never forget my teammates looking at me. It's like, we have no outside linebacker. And they lost in the second round. That following summer, my mom came home early the second time I saw her. But this time, she had an accident in the factory. The machine malfunctioned. And it used to be a big, heavy machine that she would push plastic bags into, and then it would slice them. It malfunctioned. And it cut her pinky off and mutilated the other fingers. She almost died on the factory floor, losing blood, because we had no insurance. So as I saw her on the couch, full of gauze, my mom was a woman to be feared, respected, admired. I saw her weak. And the irony is that same afternoon, hello, I am Sergeant Singleton from the United States Army. Is there a Mr. Gustavio Ortiz here? That's Gustavo Ortiz. Oh, we got your name from the football roster at the high school. And I bugged because I felt I had to be the man of the house because I was scared. Do you ever have when you were a kid and your parents are unstable or there's something going wrong and you feel that fear in your gut? It just doesn't feel right. That the strength is gone. So I bugged my mom and she signed with her left hand so that I could join the Army at the age of 17. I turned 18 in boot camp and I participated in the invasion of Kuwait. I was selected above 225 soldiers to represent my unit in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I was a United Nations peacekeeper. The very first unit to be attached, I was part of the advanced party, the very first people to be attached that took an executive order by President Clinton to send us. I was very young. But I got tired of the military. And when I came home, my mom had moved to Paris, California, which is about like from here to Bakersfield or something, right? And I asked Mom, I said, why'd you move to Paris? She said, oh, mijo, La Puente was getting bad. And I just took a look at Paris. I'm like, it's the same thing. Like the essays follow me everywhere. I can't run away. Right? They used to say, where are you from? And I'm like, right there, Mom's house. Factories in Fontana, warehouses in Corona, cement mixing in Paris. I'm driving. I woke up very early, and this man is digging a ditch in the house next door. I'm living with my mom. I'm 25 years old. Spent all this time in the military, some years in Germany. And I'm going to this factory job, and this guy's digging a trench. I say good morning to him. I hop in my car. It's very slow. My mom married, so I have a stepdad now. He helped me to rebuild the engine. We didn't know what we were doing, so it wasn't a very good job. By the time I'm driving to work, the car keeps overheating. So I pull into the A&P and put in water in the radiator, and then I move on. I get to work, and I'll never forget the guy I worked for. It was in Fontana, and he was a little man, and he used to get mad, and he had a bald head, and the veins used to pop out when he get mad. He's like, "You're late again, Ortiz." I was a corporal in the United States Army. I had 13 soldiers. I never pointed at them. He always pointed at us all day. And it was a warehouse where you had to... Where you had to take this pallet jack and pallet and put these heavy motor parts on top of the pallet, wrap it up with plastic, put a label on it, and put it in the truck. And every time they'd have a clock, bam, they'd time you. And it was never a good job. It was always work faster. You have 2 10-minute breaks, 1 25-minute lunch. I'm sitting there. You couldn't leave the area because it's a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. They would bring the ta-ta-ta truck to you. And you can buy, cheeseburgers or burritos or whatnot. Right? And the boss didn't even think I could speak English because I spoke Spanish and everyone there who spoke Spanish, so yo solo hablo español today. Right? And so I'm sitting there on the dock, kicking my feet, telling this guy stories. This older gentleman. Telling him how I jumped out of airplanes and how I did patrols on the Serbian border and how I saw the American Armada at the Kuwaiti border. He didn't believe me. I told him how I played football. I think I started to annoy him because I'm just talking. True stories. One day, he looked at me and he actually grabbed me by the wrist and he said, "Tony," he said, "why are you here?" I said, "What do you mean, why am I here?" "For $6 an hour like you." No, you don't understand. You have something I want. I said, "What's that?" He said, "You have something I want for my children." I said, "What's that?" Free. Me? I'm an immigrant. I don't even have papers. I'm lucky to have this job. You talk about going to college. You talk about playing football. You talk about politics. You talk about these things. Go live. Now, I got offended. But I kept to myself. I got back in the car. Everybody was laughing at me because I had to push start it. Hang in there with me. I'm almost done. And so I became very pensive on my way home through traffic on the 60 freeway. And I'm passing University, and then I'm hitting Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I realized, it's a true story. The radiator was hot, the car was overheating, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to burn the block. So I pulled it over. I had nothing to put water in. I looked around. I see these 2 empty 40 bottles. And I was like, that's not a good choice, but it's all I got. So I'm walking off the freeway off-ramp with these 2 empty 40 bottles in my hand. 4 months out of the military. Just earning $6 an hour. When I get to the stoplight, I see these squad cars go. I don't want no trouble, so I'm waiting for the green light. The sun was going down. It was dusk. It was right next to the freeway. It was August. There's a gas station right on the other side of the berm. I cross the street. I walk on this little mound of grass, and on the other side is the gas station. As soon as I get to the top of the mound of grass, I notice these blue and red lights behind me. So I look behind me, and there's a police officer excitingly out of his vehicle with his weapon pulled out, sidewinding me. My first reaction is, what? I had those bottles in my hand. He rushed me. He grabbed me by the collar. He pulled me down off the berm. My cheek hit the concrete. He stepped on my neck, picks me up, puts me on a hot engine, turns me around, and I want to stand. There's nothing more that I wanted at that moment was to stand on my feet. And I looked at him in his eyes, and he was probably my age. 2 different paths. 2 different people. I said, you made a big mistake. I think he knew because he threw me in back of the squad car. When the sergeant came, I said, Mr. Ortiz, you fit the description of someone stealing vehicles out of the university parking lot. I said, what do you mean I fit the description? Shaved head? I had long hair in high school. I'm 4 months out of the military. I don't know what to do with my hair. White t-shirt? I have a dirty job. I go through white t-shirts like crazy. Baggy jeans? I went to Mervyn's. The mannequin's more gangster than me. Vans? I grew up in Southern Cal. I love Vans. What do I look like, officer? Like every other brown kid that's running around there? Is that what I look like? So, sir, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. And so they took me. They apologized profusely. You know what a profusely is? Continuously. They took me to my vehicle. They opened the door. They poured water in the radiator. And they apologized and sent me on. That was my first experience with Riverside Police Department. I went home and I drove home. And the sun was down, and I parked the car, and I saw this man that was digging in the morning. He was still digging. And I turned off the car, and I turned off the radio, and I sat in silence, and my eyes watered up because I kept thinking that first sergeant who told me I was his best soldier. I kept thinking about that colonel that said, you're the best of America. I kept thinking about that congressman and senator who walked in our tents and said, you're the best America has to offer. And now I'm working $6 an hour getting manhandled by cops because of how I look. And I look at that man digging, and I was like, is that me? Is that it? Man, it just ended now. So I walked into the house, and I told my mom what happened. She told me, oh, no, the police don't do things like that. So I took a deep breath, and I walked upstairs, and when I left for the Army, my little sister was frizzy hair and big old glasses and hairy legs and riding her bicycle. And when I came home from the Army, she was all hot. And I opened the door, and I said, Gladys, she's all on the phone. She's like, oh my God, it's my brother. I said, loser? You're at home, and you're 25, loser. It's my brother. He's a loser. I said, I took the phone from her. I said, Gladys, where's the nearest college? She said, I don't know. There's this one in Riverside. Get out of my room. So that next morning, in that same car, that same t-shirt, the same jeans, and the same Vans, I walked onto Riverside City College. I didn't know what was going to happen. You guys know what kind of student I was, but something had to give. My life had to change. So I played football. I became a second-string outside linebacker that got Division III letters. I ran for student body president and won. I got to travel the state. I got to sit in the governor's office with Gray Davis, tell my story, advocate for student rights. Someone saw me speaking to kids, and they said, you should work here. I transferred to Cal State Fullerton. I got a bachelor's degree in public relations, and I just completed my master's degree in public administration. And I'm looking for more. What gave me my freedom was how I choose to use my time for the infrastructure that already exists for people who already sacrificed so that I could have those things. But a lot of us just don't know it's there. So help me to tell them. Tell your neighbors. Tell your aunts. Tell your uncles. Tell your nephews. Tell your cousins. If you want to go to college, if you want to take charge of your life and truly want to be free, go to college. Now, not everybody's going to get a 4-year degree. We understand that. Be reasonable. Be relevant with what you're pursuing. But know this, that if it burns in your heart, you got to bring it out. Everybody said, let it out.
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 If it burns in your heart, you got to let it out. It's got to come out. Lest you sit there in your own stew for the next 50 years. The last thing I want to share with you is, and hang in there 3 minutes. When I was a little kid, I went to middle school, and somebody told me that there was this person that could fly. And I said, nuh-uh. And so I went home, and in a house full of Latinas, we're eating dinner, at 7 o'clock. What happens? Novela. So I had to eat really fast to claim the TV. We had a big black and white TV with a knob, and I did see Michael Jordan for the first time, and he flew, and he didn't fly like that. He flew like 2 feet off the ground, lateral like that. And so I went to my mom, and I said, Mom, I want some Air Jordans. And my mom said, like, Erica? I didn't know no Air Jordans. So I dragged her to the mall. I dragged her to the Foot Locker. My mom hates going to the mall because she knows it's expensive. And we look, the shoes are right there on this pedestal with the music, and it's, I look at the shoes. And my mom looks at the shoes, she looks at the price, she looks at me, she says, estás loco. She says, you're crazy. So that Saturday morning, she took me to the swap meet. And my mom spoke very little English, and so did the Korean lady selling the shoes, but they haggled. It was one of those, like, I don't know her. That's not my mom. And my mom came to me, she told me, I got them. And she had a Nike box and everything. And I said, you got them? Said, really? You got them? She said, yes, I got them. And I opened the box, and I moved the tissue, and they said, Air Jordans. They weren't the real thing. You guys know how cruel middle schoolers can be. And I was like, "There's not the real thing." My mom's like, "You're gonna wear them." So I wore them to school, and they were bagging. And I was a chubby kid, so I couldn't fly. But and eventually I found football, and God bless football, because I was not a very good basketball player. And but I was so intrigued by this man. How does he achieve greatness like that? So I did more research, and I found that he visualizes. He sees himself succeed before he actually attempts the act. So I read more on it, and I started to use it, and I've been using it in my life. He sees himself succeed before he attempts the act. If you have a job interview, a test, if you got to study more, if you got to change the way you live, change the people you hang around, you got to see it happen. You got to make the plan for your life. Visualize it. Visualize your life. Visualize your day. And you'll find that your body will move naturally in those directions. So repeat after me. If I see it, if I believe it, I can be it. Because I see it. Because I believe it. Because I am it. God bless you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
You gave me chills, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank 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 you.